Today we're going to finish up our section on inequalities. In particular, we were at the point where we were looking at absolute value inequalities and graphing and shading those when we're done as well. And I believe we're on example 10. Does that sound right to you guys? We've done these two and we are here. Okay, so let me remind you where we were when we left off last time for absolute value inequalities specifically. I had introduced sort of some mnemonic devices to help you remember what to do in each scenario. If you have a greater than or a greater than or equal to symbol, you make an or statement, and there's two separate inequalities with the word or between them. And if you have a less than and statement, you make a triple inequality and you solve it, traditionally speaking, moving things around and so forth, but between three sides of the inequality, okay? And we had done a couple of examples, one where it was a greater and we had an or statement, and we have the shading always on the outside of a greater than statement, and one where it is a less than statement once we isolate the absolute value, right? And then a less than is the triple inequality where we shade between the two endpoint values. We've used parentheses when we have a greater than or a less than, and then brackets when we've got greater than equal to, less than equal to. Okay, this is the one that we're on. So go ahead and jot this one down. We're going to do the absolute value of y minus 4 less than or equal to 6. Okay, so the absolute value is already isolated, right? So once we've isolated that, we need to decide, do we have a less than and statement or a greater or statement? This one is a less than, so it is an and statement. So and statements look like what when we rewrite them? Okay, so we have a triple inequality, right? So we have three parts with the absolute value part in the middle. So the absolute value part in the middle, that would be the y minus 4, is in between two inequality statements. The right-hand side is the same value that we already have, so 6. What would the left-hand side be? -6. The 10 is the problem number.
No, I know.
Okay. Okay, you're just ahead of me then.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, starts out as -6. Okay, so this is our beginning step. And then Sarah's going to tell me what to do next because she's further along than I was. What did you do next?
I added 4.
Good.
Yes.
So we need to take what's in the middle and solve it for y. And she's exactly right. We would add 4 to each piece. Like this. So everything we do to all three sides of the inequality. What do I get on the left? That's -2. In the middle is y, that was the whole point. And on the right is 10. That was the 10 that she was referring to, I think. Okay, so this is solved. This is our solution. And then as we graph it, what are we going to do? Right, and we need to make sure we put them in there in the right order. So of course -2 is before 10. Where will I shade? In between. And will I use parentheses or brackets? Brackets, because this one has the equal to part. And the brackets, of course, open into the shading. So I have brackets like this. Okay, let's try another one. First step is to make sure that the absolute value is isolated. Is it? Yeah. Okay. Second step is to make sure we decide, is it a greater than or statement or a less than and statement? It's a greater than or statement, right? All right, so when I have an or statement, what is that going to change into? Two separate inequalities. Okay, so we'll have two pieces with the word or between them. What is one of the inequalities that you're going to write down? Yeah. The same as the problem without the absolute values, right? Oops. What is the other one that you're going to write down? Okay, so the 3x plus 5 or minus 5 will stay the same. So, Megan, when you say switch the sign, can you be more specific?
Less than or equal to.
Good. Okay, so we switch the inequality symbol. That's one sign that we switch. And then the other sign that we switch is the sign on the numerical value. So it becomes a -2. Now, they solve in exactly the same way, right? Like, what's the first thing I have to do to solve either of these inequalities? Plus 5. So I'm going to do plus 5 on both sides of the left-hand one. So that's 3x is greater than or equal to what? 7. And if I do plus 5 to the one on the right, I have 3x is less than or equal to what? 3. Yeah. What's the next step? Before I graph, I still need to do one more thing. Divide by 3. And again, on each piece. So on the left-hand one, I have x is greater than or equal to 7/3 there. I can't simplify that, right? It's just 7/3. It's a little more than 2, though. And then on the right-hand side, I have x is less than or equal to what? 1. So I did that last time, didn't I? I got to change that so it doesn't keep happening. Okay, so on this graph, I have to put both numbers in. Which number comes first, 1 or 7/3? The 1 does, because 7/3 is bigger than 2, so it's certainly bigger than 1. So I've got 1 and I've got 7/3. Where will I shade? On the outsides. And you can do that and remember that in one of two ways. You could actually just know that every time you have an or statement, it's on the outside. That's one way to do that. Or if you look at the individual statements, like if I look at this one and it says x is less than or equal to 1, well, that's this piece. This is less than or equal to 1. And on this one where it says x is greater than or equal to 7/3, well, that's to the right because that's the greater than 7/3 part. So either way. And then will I use parentheses or brackets? Yeah, this one has brackets as well. Okay, any questions on that one? All right, we have our last question for today. My first step is always to do what? Isolate. Yeah, if we did radicals, we were doing radicals. Here we're doing absolute values, so isolating absolute values. Yeah. So what would I do first to help, because this one's not already isolated. What would I have to do to isolate this one first? Yeah, I need to subtract the 4 that's at the end. So I have 3, and then I have the absolute value of 7 minus x is less than 3. 7 minus 4 is 3. Is the absolute value isolated? Not yet. What else do I need to do? Yeah, I need to divide by 3. So at that point, I do in fact only have the absolute value on the left. 3 divided by 3, of course, is 1. Okay, absolute value has been isolated. What's my second step? Decide if it's an and or an or. Which one is this one? Is it an and or an or? It's an and, because it is a less than statement, right? And statements, what do they look like when I create them? Triple inequalities, absolutely. So last time Keely had me put the part that's in the absolute values in between like this. Does that look good to you guys? Good. What's going to go on either side now of the inequality symbols? Yeah, 1 and -1. Okay, very good. Now I need to solve for the x in the middle. What will I do? Subtract the 7 from all three parts. What will I have on the left? The left is negative 8. In the middle I have negative x. And on the right, what do I have? Negative 6. All right, what's the last thing that I need to do then? Can't graph yet because I got to have x alone and I've still got it with a negative, so I'm going to divide by -1. You're just really ready to get to that graphing part, aren't you, Alyssa? Yeah, me too. -1. So I need to divide or multiply, either way, by a -1. Obviously, that's going to create an 8 on the left and a 6 on the right. X is in the middle. But I got to flip my signs, right? Yeah, and if you think about them, it has to make sense that you flip your signs. Because it has to be true that whatever's happening here and here follow the relationship of these symbols. If my symbols don't get switched, I'm trying to tell you that 8 is less than 6. That's a problem. So from a conceptual point of view, they have to switch. From sort of a rules point of view, I divided by a negative, right? Multiply, divide by negative, signs change. So I have two values to put on my number line. They are what? 6 and 8. Which comes first? 6. And then where will I shade? In between them. Will I use parentheses or brackets? This one is parentheses. Any questions on that one? All right.